I suppose that's that then. That's 6 episodes of the documentary series, etc., between Harry and Meghan. What do you think?
I think it's 6 hours of my life I'll never get back.
So, it was certainly draining. I noticed how each episode seemed longer than the last, yet they were all sort of went to the same length. I don't know anymore. It was very exhausting.
I think we were both right in what we predicted for this as well. It was about them, their happiness. Very self-serving, but also they did get the digs in about the royal family, especially William. But if we go from the beginning, as we try to do, they had a new bestie, a new friend.
Who's their new friend?
Billionaire.
I don't think I would mind so much having a billionaire friend who wrote me a letter. I think it was quite strange how it came about. So he sent something across to Meghan just before she got married. Good luck, I think, is probably the shortened version for that, based upon his own experiences. And what did she do? Did she pocket it? Was it part of the plan? So, obviously they went for their freedom flight. I think they called it that straight out the gates. Oh, we're on our freedom flight. Harry seems so elated that they're doing what they're doing, and so they get over to the States, and a couple of years pass by, and she decides to call Tyler Perry.
Yeah, she decides to call, and he offers the use of a house. And says, and then they say, oh, we'll only stay a couple of weeks, and he says, no, you can stay as long as you need. So they end up staying 6 weeks, and then they only leave after 6 weeks because somebody leaked their address. Like Harry said, everybody in the world knew. I certainly didn't know where they lived, and they certainly didn't care either. And then they had to move on. However, Tyler Perry, extremely supportive, even though he'd never met her.
Yeah, a lot of it came across as applying personal issues, which seems to be something that is a lot of tradable currency in the world of Rachel Markle, if we're going to call her by a name. We'll say Meghan Markle. It seems to trade a lot of currency with her. Never an opportunity seems to go to waste. So she seems to be quite fortunate in the attachments that she forms with certain people. Just jump onto this person, jump onto that person. And it just so happens that, luckily for her, talk about falling upwards, luckily for her, a billionaire actor who, we don't really have any understanding of in the UK. None of his films I don't think they've ever done anything. I wouldn't even know one if I was told one, what any of his films are. But either way, credit where it's due. He's a very incredibly successful billionaire actor who's made the same joke repetitively and made a bunch of money out of it. So it just so happens that he, for whatever reason, found some commonality with the talented Meghan.
Well, that's it. He said that he'd seen, he grew up with his father abusing his mum, which is a horrific thing. And then he compared that to Meghan and Harry. So Meghan suffered abuse from the press. And I think he did use the phrase battered woman. He knows a battered woman when he sees one. I don't think he can compare it to that. And then he said that Harry was like that as well. But a common theme throughout this entire series has been language, and they've used it very well. So Meghan's a victim, Meghan's now abused, Meghan's now a battered woman. And then they constantly refer to the royal family as the institution, which sounds very cold. And and does not have good connotations to it, whereas everybody else refers to them as the royal family, because that's what they are. So language has been used very well here, and it was with Tyler Perry. Like I say, comparing it to a battered woman is all falls into the victimhood. And I think what they're trying to do is get people back on their side here by showing, their side of the story, and by, saying how downtrodden they were. She was like this because Britain was racist. She was like this because she was abused. She was like this because she was a battered woman. The language is all over the place, really.
Yeah, and the thing is, he as a self-professed not a person who watches the royals, even though he knew who they were, but he specifically knew who Diana was, which is quite odd, really, because Meghan didn't seem to know who Princess Diana's son was, weirdly enough. So he seems to know all of that, and he made the connection with Diana, which is probably a prerequisite in order to contribute to the documentary. You have to sort of say that that Meghan and Diana are the same person. And he referenced that his memory of Diana was when she was walking through the airport and she was putting up the tennis racket in front of her face to hide from the press because they were exhausting. And that's something I can absolutely, totally understand because it was true. There's so much evidence of it. I think maybe any sort of paparazzi footage throughout this documentary, you could make an old episode about what Diana had to go through. And so she's there walking through the airport with the tennis racket covering her face, and it's just that absolutely resonates with what the short that we put up regarding Kate Middleton, Princess Catherine, our current Princess of Wales, and what she had to go through before she was a royal. And she was up against a tree, covering her hand with her face, with her sister next to her, begging the paparazzi to stop taking pictures of her. And they were saying, take your hand down, blah, blah, blah. And she said, I'm not going to take my hand, this is my private life. Very, very much similar to what Diana had to go through. I'm perplexed, really, that it seems to be okay to feel sort of sympathy towards Meghan and yet totally disregard that when there's no footage whatsoever. In 6 hours, have we seen anything remotely resembling that?
No, and you won't see it because there isn't any. That's why they keep showing the footage of Diana. Like, throughout all of the episodes, they've shown so much footage of Diana getting chased by the paparazzi, and they would say, I didn't want it to happen to Meghan, newspapers were following her, etc., etc. But there's no evidence for that. Now, if you have to show the footage of what happened to Diana, then that's because there's no footage of that happening to Meghan. So why they keep peddling that, I don't know.
I don't think we needed to see anything more than the first image. Maybe you could do it potentially, a few times, but it was every episode, especially the first few, was Diana being, hounded by the paparazzi because there's so much of it out there, and they're comparing the two, and it was just completely for want. It just was not the case, and yet there's actual evidence of Kate having to go through exactly that before she had any royal protection. And such footage was used, especially in the earlier episodes, but her suffering wasn't acknowledged.
No, and it won't be because it doesn't fit the rhetoric that suffering happens to everybody, and it doesn't fit the message that they're trying to put out. And the difference with this as well, though, is like I say, the language used. So Tyler Perry, there was helicopters there 24/7. And then Harry's like, oh, that's the second one today. So is it 24/7 or is it 2? Because 2's bad enough, but 2 makes you sound like a hypocrite if you say they're there 24/7. It's ridiculous. And then it's like, oh, everybody in the world find out where we were, we just want privacy. And then they say, oh, and that's when we moved to Santa Barbara. So now everybody knows you live in Santa Barbara. Like, what are you doing? Do you want people to know where you are? And they can't blame the royal family for leaking that they were at Tyler Perry's house because, well, Harry didn't even tell his family where he was, which is a very strange thing to do. But, you know, they barely had footage of a helicopter. They barely had footage of a drone. They had footage of a security guard standing in a field doing nothing because no one was there. And yes, they had footage of somebody going up to the house, one person solitary on his own. It's all smoke and mirrors, it really, really is.
Well, that was in Canada. That wasn't even in Tyler Perry's billionaire Tyler Perry's, you know, Los Angeles mansion.
It's exactly, the whole thing, the imagery, the language, it's all to invoke something, and to make you feel sorry for Meghan. And I don't know if you should feel sorry for her, you know. At the end of the day, going through anything like that for anybody is bad. But if you're going to start comparing yourself to people, that's when people get, you know, angry at it. Like, well, why do you think it's okay for you to do this, etc. But the thing with them as well is that they've definitely got an agenda this time, right? I don't know what's going on. I don't know whether they want to take the royal family down or they just want to take the brother down and go back to the royal family for themselves. But yeah, it's, I don't know. He said some stuff that I don't think he can come back from in regards to relationships with his brother.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I would say we could, touch on towards the end, because it did seem to end on an incredibly sour note. I would say, at least from Meghan's perspective. And I would probably say this accounted for at least maybe 40% of this episode, probably more actually, that she was wanted to take down the Daily Mail. I mean, we said previously, the Daily Mail, they're not exactly the most respected tabloid ever. I mean, I don't think they viewed themselves as a tabloid, and yet they are. They have a huge presence in the States, especially the online version, not as much the print version, but the Daily Mail Online is a huge, huge presence in the United States, especially when it comes to celebrity coverage. And she's saying, oh, there's a tab for me. I've got my own tab. Well, you know something, absolutely every public figure, you know, more famous than she is. I mean, I suppose she's very famous. We can't dispute that now anymore. The sad thing is, a lot of those actually worked hard to achieve their fame. They didn't just, you know, fall into the right circumstance to make it happen. They actually, you know, had accolades, you know, Oscar performances, things like that. Everyone's got their own tab. It's just part of the furniture. And she says that they're going to make a fortune, and it just seems constantly, yet again, this fortune, this monetary thing, this money, always about making a fortune, which again, it's so contradictory to what she's moaning about what her dad did, because maybe the whole thing for her is about the fortune.
Well, obviously, because she's moaning that they make fortunes, but they've just made $100 million from giving a towel 6-hour interviews. She's done the same thing. But to be honest, she's not the first celebrity, and she won't be the last celebrity that's won a case against the Daily Mail. And again, it was the language of it. It's like classed as a win that she did. She didn't take them on. She wasn't the lawyer there. She hired really prominent lawyers to do it for her. And yes, she won the case, but again, a lot of people do. Was it Hugh Grant that had a problem with the Daily Mail, or was that a different paper?
No, I think that was the Daily Mail, wasn't it? I think he sort of took up an issue with the Daily Mail.
Yeah, I think they hacked his phone or something. Like I said, she wasn't the first, and she definitely won't be the last. But it's celebrated as this big win. I mean,
it's celebrated almost as if the whole thing has been built up six episodes, and the like sort of cathartic kind of grand victory was at the end, which footage was used in the trailer initially, especially when she looked all sallow and sad about this. So it seems like this is like really defeat, because she had losses and gains throughout this, and she had her lawyer as a contributor who was paid as well. So make of that what you will. Can't say it's necessarily the most trusted person if they're being paid to represent you. I don't know if they're going to actually be completely neutral on such matters. And the thing is, regarding her approach to the media, which of course she requires it. She absolutely dotes on the media. It's needed for the causes that she's supposed to care about. And I say supposed to care about with intention, because it's very difficult for me to really feel that she does care about anything other than herself. Specifically because she sits there, and we saw this especially in this episode, of her many sort of videos of her like watching and reading through social media. And sometimes, like, especially if you're a public figure, one of the first most crucial pieces of advice that you have, especially for people who become insta famous like she did, because she wasn't famous before, she just wasn't, no one knew who she was before this, is to not read such things. And maybe that got to her slightly, because I don't think she's someone who's ever been used to being criticised. She was daddy's little princess, and she dropped him immediately. And she's there. She's worried about all of these sort of articles and opinions that people have online, or these journalists and stuff, and things that are interested in her. But she's never had to deal with the criticism. And so I think that's an issue. And so she wants to know about, like, she wants her privacy to be respected whilst broadcasting it on Netflix. And I think the funny thing is, so I know that Marie Antoinette never said, let them eat cake, but I feel like there's some sort of analogy here with, like, she wants her cake and she wants to eat it.
Yeah, she's chowing down on a big 16 piece. That's the cake that she's currently chomping on.
A 3-tier 16 piece, a 3-tier.
But yeah, it's exactly as you said. I mean, again, we've got all the things going on here. So this little digs to the royal family again. It's wrong to say nothing. Like, they know the royal family can say nothing, so I do think that was a sly dig at them. She's getting across everything that she wants, which is that they are a loving family. I mean, good. Well done. That they meditate.
I'll just start with the meditate stuff. Goodness me.
They're eco-warriors. They've been through this, they've been through that, they've been through the other. I mean, it was all very boring, to be honest. Once they'd said, the more explosive stuff, which I don't think was as explosive as they were referring to be honest. But once they said it, it was just like all about them, and this just sounds so self-serving. Even the friends that they have on there sound so self-serving. And she wants a cake and she wants to eat it, and I honestly think she's doing it. I think whatever happens now, she's got everything she wanted. If the royal family strip them of the royals, that'll be another angle, that'll be another documentary, another interview, another moneymaker. If they don't, it'll be another documentary in 5 years, an update on their life, another moneymaker. But she's ended up with the man that she wanted, the title that she wanted, in the country where she was born, and she's made a lot of money from it. That's exactly what she wanted. And she keeps referring to herself as like peace, truth. And she said right at the end of the documentary, if we have to have this spotlight on us, we're going to highlight issues to you and we're going to help people. Well, that's what you were doing in the royal family. And you don't have to have that spotlight on you. You want it on you. You're getting it. You keep accepting interviews.
Absolutely. There was one thing that really stuck out to me, and it was almost aggressive. Now, as a homosexual male, I don't like to repeat that too often. I have to be honest, I do quite like a strong woman. Like, there's someone, especially someone who really takes control of situations. I do like that. I do. It just tends to come about more impressive when it's earned and when it's warranted and when it's got some gumption about it. And I don't find that to be the case with her at all. I just don't see any sort of anything along those lines. And the one thing that she said, and it was like in a video, again, everything would have had to have been verified for her, supplied by her. Everything would have had to have gone through her approval. And she says, like, we're going to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild 3 times until it's rebuilt, right? Now, there's a rule of 3 in psychology. There's also like it can sometimes be called a compliment sandwich as well. But there's like a rule of 3 when it comes to like getting your message across to people. Use things in terms of 3. So you just deliver the message, deliver the message, deliver the message. The repetition of 3. Like, Margaret Thatcher did it. Education, 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 right? It's one of those things for whatever reason. But she's like, rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. I think she's just a very, very clever person. I don't think she would have done that without having some semblance of a clue about what purpose she was. I do wonder if she's going to look to enter politics.
That would be interesting. I don't know the rules in America, but she certainly couldn't enter politics here with that title. Maybe in America they don't have that rule, but maybe it's going that way. I mean, is she that ambitious? Does she want to be president of the United States?
I honestly do feel that's the case. She has the single-minded drive. Again, these are normally such positive things for me, especially when it comes to women, for them to have. I always look at things like that and think, that's something that I think you should go for. It's just, there's nothing backing it up that has anything sort of tangible. It just comes across as poor me, poor me, poor me.
Poor me. With my billionaire friend Tyler Perry, in my billionaire text from Beyonce calling me a brave woman, and my prince husband in my huge mansion with however.
That's the problem. So she wants us to feel happy, right? And they're there in this beautifully lavish garden in an absolutely gorgeous home in Montecito in Southern California. And I don't begrudge anybody's success, right? But look, so fair enough. She had the acumen from Tyler Perry, etc. But initially, who funded that? Where did that money come from?
Well, Harry, Diana.
Yeah, so it's no wonder she's there. And then the exploitation, and I don't like to use the word exploitation, but it suits her to use the children when she wants to. I would never, ever imagine, let's just be hypothetical, if Diana, I suppose it's different because Diana had a first in line to the throne situation and would have had to have taken a first in line to the throne. But look at Diana. I can't imagine her using her children for such a documentary.
Well, no, she wouldn't have, because she wanted to protect them, and that's what she did. She didn't want people taking pictures of them. Other than what she had to do in regards to the official photographs, I don't think she would have done that at all. She wanted the opposite for them, in fact. But Meghan, as you say, they've been all over the documentary. It's almost like, oh, look at us, we're so happy, we're so happy, we're so happy. And again, good. But just don't be hypocritical with it. Because, stepping away from Meghan for a second, even Harry. Harry was hypocritical. Harry was slamming his brother again with his brother. I mean, the palace has got to respond to something in this documentary. They have to. And I also think it was a dig sort of right at the end of the documentary when Meghan reconnected with her niece. I mean, it's fantastic that they did that just in time for the documentary. But is that also a dig to...
Well, wait, just no. It's important. Just hold that thought a second. Like, isn't that the niece from her dad's side? Just like the grand from her dad's side. I'm just wondering where all this, where everyone from her mum's side is, and what's the situation behind that. That would be an interesting sort of deep dive. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I haven't got a clue. I mean, her mum comes across really well, actually. And I think her mum's very well spoken. And comes across as, a classy woman, actually. But I don't know, I feel like, was her niece returning more than what it was? Was it also a sly dig at William to come and reconnect? I mean, what's also strange about this as well is how people were saying to Meghan, like Serena Williams was saying, your family can be your friends too, and they've built their own family. I mean, Meghan's still got a mum, she's got a niece, and she's in America surrounded by all of her friends. It's Harry that hasn't got any of that. Well, there was a 10-second clip of Princess Eugenie when she must have popped over. But she lives in the UK. He's not speaking to his brother by all accounts. I don't know if he's speaking to his dad. Has he got any friends over there? I mean, who knows? But the emphasis again was on Meghan. And Meghan's friends, her family. She's got a mum. At least she's got a mum. Harry's got nobody in the world.
Well, this is the thing. I think it's really important to point out, actually, that Harry's situation in this, because certainly starting out, and especially in the first episode of this whole saga or crap show, it was to me, I sort of felt sympathy and worry and concern. That's evaporated entirely. That's it. All of the goodwill that I had previously has dissipated entirely. So, he seems to have this very petulant, frustrated, exploited angle, and entitled. And I don't like. Well, of course, he's prince of England, I suppose, Britain even, or the Commonwealth. He's got all of those titles, but he's very entitled with it. That's strange, because when he's supposed to be presenting himself as not being entitled, he actually really does come across as incredibly entitled. So with the whole paparazzi situation, and he went to those awards with Meghan, and he was very aggressive with an umbrella, and one of the security people that worked for him, or his personal assistant, not sure which, maybe both, told him to stop. So she's totally inspired that kind of negative side. So he's very stubborn and self-righteous, and thinks he's bigger than he is, really, in terms of like what Diana achieved was organic. What Harry's had was through birthright. And it it does make you slightly wonder, except all of the qualities that Harry thinks he's got are absolutely present in his brother.
Well, would he still come across as entitled if he was part of the royal family? And that's the whole juxtaposition here, because I don't think he would. He comes across entitled now because he's done all these documentaries. He's slammed the royal family, and he's made money from selling his story, which is, according to them, one of the reasons why they wanted to leave the UK, because of all these stories. Look, William, I don't think is in the royal family for his inheritance. I think he's there for duty. Harry left, that his decision. No one's saying it was right or wrong, but go quietly and with some dignity. 100% relinquish your titles now, because you've done enough damage. And it was like when Harry went back for Prince Philip's funeral, and he said, "Oh, I didn't get the apology that and I've got to make peace with myself that I'm not going to get one now." That's entitled. What does he need to apologise for? For all we know, what he said was a lie, because there's no evidence. If it did happen, it sounds like a family argument. Everyone's adults, just get over it. Why don't you reach out first? What are you waiting for? If you really want to speak to him that badly. And it's like Harry goes on about his grandfather passing away and said, that he died peacefully and he was happy for him, that he went peacefully and all this. And he also said his grandfather was cheeky, had a great sense of humour and banter. If there was someone in the royal family that's made racist gaffes over the years, it was Prince Philip. So Harry's defending him, just saying it was banter, which, he's arguably one of the most controversial figures from the royal family.
He is notorious for, dropping the ball, so to speak. Don't think it was meant in that way. But if you want to make inference about what intentions are and what intentions aren't, especially given the scandal recently around Ngozi Fulani regarding Lady Hussey, you have to sort of measure that correctly, because the accusations that are levelled here are significant. They didn't say who it was that said what they said regarding the appearance of what Archie would be, which I think we mentioned previously. Whoopi Goldberg said, "Oh, it could a baby that could pop out looking like me," and Ian Wright, "Oh, it's about time for a black prince," etc. Black people saying those sorts of things, and yet the family member, which basically the whole Oprah interview was centered around, was the race situation. What's the baby going to look like, right? Why is that? I don't understand the sort of double standards applied to this situation. What is that about?
God knows. But, it might have been Prince Philip that said it. I mean, I think we might find out in Harry's book, because they showed the bit of the Oprah interview where he said he would never say, just to stir up that again. I mean, that got so much attention, and they've just shown it again. There's a reason they've shown it again, because it got attention the first time. So we'll see what happens, really. I mean, it's not going to end, is it? That's the thing. There's going to be a book. They've already said she's admitted. There's a spotlight on her, she's going to use it. They're going to be all over the place. What I hope for both of them is they just stop talking about the personal stuff.
It's the thing is, you really, well, this is the thing, you really do. Like, the personal stuff, to some extent, is fine, because I will say this, and I think it was the first of this part of the series, when they were talking about the wedding, Actually, it's quite endearing to know about people's weddings, especially given the situation for her. It would have been quite nice, except every time she just seemed to drop then there's going to be a bombshell. Actually, sometimes it would be quite nice to listen to what her take was, especially marrying it from a perspective, something that's so, alien circumstance to her, could have come across so well without having to moan and make such a deal and just be like, we just wanted to like share it with everybody. I think that would have, again, it's a case of like what would have come across well for them if they'd have just imparted such information. I would have probably been slightly interested in what that situation was, but when it's become something completely different, it was their story with sort of like undertones, and I don't even know if they were undertones because eventually they sort of became overtones, especially towards Harry and against his own brother. And I asked him like, "Oh, Harry, what are you going to miss about the family?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm going to miss the silly, weird family gatherings. I'm going to miss the friends." And he's lost a few UK friends because of this situation. And they didn't really say why he lost those friends. Bearing in mind that, again, going back to the decision that Harry made the decision, right? They didn't say why he lost his friends. And Meghan Pugh said, "Oh, they always say, oh, you lose your friends." There's a few subtle things that they give out, a few sort of clues as to what went on. But they had 6 hours to just spill. And that never happened. It was just an elongated, overly blown up, politically motivated, dull-fest attack on the royal family.
It was all left open to interpretation. They haven't confirmed or denied anything, really. Where the royal family has been involved, they've just told their story of the press, which again can all be refuted, well, most of it. But speaking as you just did of royal weddings, I mean, probably drawing towards the end of towards the end of the episode now anyway, we were treated again to another Meghan poem.
I can't remember the end of the poem. I think we do need to just take moments, pieces that I got out of it. And it was something like, it wasn't a poem, it was a speech, wasn't it, the wedding, which she just delivered wholesale at the end.
Well, it was supposed to be a speech, but as far as I'm concerned, it went into a poem because it rhymed. And what was the last words?
Love wins.
Love wins.
Oh, goodness me.
Do you know what's funny? It's funny that she gave a speech about her husband at the wedding and signed it off with something that she signs off a text with a friend.
Oh God! Yeah, it's not just any speech. And she's like, "This was a bit unorthodox. This is no, not unorthodox." She said something more sort of specific than that, wasn't it? It wasn't unorthodox. It was along those lines. She said something, some synonym of unorthodox. And so she's like, that to me, that's like somebody who's so confident and so proud and so sure of themselves as a linguist, speechwriter, to deliver this masterpiece. And it was an interval. At a wedding, her own wedding, when she chose to do that. I mean, I've been to a speech when a bride's done a wedding when a bride's done a speech. I personally have done a speech at a wedding, and I think it's lovely. But to be sort of that, I'm going to go against the grain. Look at me, I'm so different, and it was that. We're going to have to get it off. We're going to have to do something with it. It's just, but I mean, it was one part. It's like, to love and to garden and to travel and to laugh. It's like that kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and in the beginning
and to rack up all that.
A fairy tale, fairy tale. Some Some would call her an actress. Some would call him a prince.
Oh, goodness me. Is she like trying to... Oh, that just reminds me completely, actually. And this is something that I think needs to be kind of resurfaced. It's where Harry and her are, I think they're speaking to one of the Disney higher-ups, and they're doing sort of like a walk around. So, oh, she does voiceovers as well. He's like doing that, like selling her to like... That seems to have like gone away. And that should have been a little bit of a bigger story.
Well, yeah,
But I suppose, I mean,
to it, hasn't it?
well, I guess it has, yeah. I suppose, just to sort of like slightly wrap it up, I think I've probably got two sort of questions, if that's okay. I mean, is there anything you think you'd like to say about this episode at all? We've covered it all.
0 out of 10 on TripAdvisor, do not recommend.
I wasn't asking for the ratings. I would say -1, just to like outdo you. But yeah, I guess my two questions in relation to, in a summary, and we are at some point going to go through. At least there's three things that we might have to go through afterwards. But there's two questions I've got just now. One of them is, what do you think they could have done better?
Just kept their mouth shut. Just been quiet. Or shown some hubris, shown some humility. Any of those things would have made them come across a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say, to me, if it's going to be, a little bit more direct, it would have been like, you can have your cake and eat it, right? That's kind of possible, but you can't have every cake and eat it. So she wanted to make megabucks. That's how it all come across. The whole thing come across that way. If they wanted to share the message regarding their charitable endeavours, which just a slightly dipping back into, I think there was one point, it was like, well, all the royal family care about is their charities. It's like, what's wrong with charities? That's supposed to be a good thing, right? So,
very good that they all care about their charities.
Yeah, okay, I can't see the negative in that. But yeah, so I think they could have, they could have gone to South Africa, they could have done all sorts of things. If it come across as genuine, it was totally a winnable situation for them. They could have described their love life and their family and their situation and what it felt like for them to leave the situation, and left all of the attacking away. They didn't have to do that. That was totally unnecessary. If they'd have just left all of that out, this could have been, moderately kind of sweet and kind of endearing, like a couple fall in love, transatlantic partnership, America meets a prince, blah, 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 blah. That could have been like quite sweet in a way. Could have been. Bit Hallmark, but kind of sweet. There's no need for the attacking. There's no need to push the family thing on. That could be kept behind closed doors. And the fact that it wasn't, to me, is absolutely pivotal as to why I think she's a monster. And so is he.
Yeah, definitely. Alright, what was your second question?
And so my next question is going to be, what do you think the fallout from this is going to be?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be any. I think Meghan and Harry have got everything that they wanted. If there is fallout, it goes in their favour because it's something else that they can talk about. I do think the palace will respond, but I think they'll respond in a way to say that they wish Harry and Meghan the best. It'll probably be something along the lines of the recollections may differ after the Oprah interview. I don't think they'll be stripped of the titles. And I think that they'll continue to do exactly what they're doing. And I think the next time they need some more money, it'll be well, I say more secrets, but there wasn't really many secrets. It was all kind of elusive. So I think if they need more money, they'll be more direct. But fallout wise, I think they've got away with it.
Aside from how depressing that was, but I probably understand. I think to some extent, I'd say almost agree. Except I do think the palace response is a nebulous one. I think it's sort of, is it a good idea or is it a bad idea? This is the thing. It's like there's answers either side. I think complete ignorance might be a positive approach. I think they should strip the titles. I think they should do that. And if they want to make money out of such a thing, I do think it's got a short shelf life with diminishing returns. I think if they take the titles away, eventually they're going to be former royals. I don't think Harry has the substantial kind of value in terms of the media perspective without the title. He doesn't have the charisma, he doesn't have he did sort of to some extent, I guess, but he doesn't have, neither of them are very talented people. Like, they're not actors. I mean, I know she's supposed to be an actor or whatever, but they're not the most impressive. I mean, she does this really subtle thing, and you do an incredible impression of her, by the way. I just like, no, it's like, welcome to Archetypes, where she does it archetypes, like that kind of thing that she does. You know what I mean? Like that sort of really, it's almost creepy. I think her podcast proved that she's got not much to say. In my opinion, that they're a little bit of a fart in the wind. Right. I do think so, but I'm more optimistic than you.
We can put hope.
Right, but well, at least from me, shall we wrap up?
Yeah, let's get this over and done with once and for all.
Yeah, well, we say once and for all. We've got I do think we're probably going to potentially pay attention to Spare. We're probably going to want to know at least if there's any juice left to squeeze, but I don't think there's any juice at all. I think it was already like a raisin. It's like a raisin. A juiceless grape. That's what it should be called. That Harry's biography should be called A Juiceless Grape.
That's a great analogy for the series.
But yeah, anyway, if you've been listening to this for so long, especially if you watched all of them, very incredibly grateful and very much appreciate if you could like, comment, subscribe, share if possible. And all comments are welcome, even the negative ones. We've been negative enough, I think, about Queen Meghan of Canada.